بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أفضل الأنبياء والمرسلين Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi wa sallam. We're continuing the Practical Tawheed series. Again, like I said, that the most important thing that we have to understand is this issue of Tawheed. And it's unfortunate that for many years, it wasn't the focal point of Islamic dawah in our city, Philadelphia, or other than that. Wa alaikum salam wa barakatuh. What's going on, Abuesa? Alhamdulillah. And for everybody need to know, the library will be moving soon. I just got the good news that the library will be moving to a better location, a better neighborhood. So inshallah, make dua that can come to fruition sooner than later. Inshallah ta'ala, because that library is needed, and we ask Allah to protect the brothers who are part of that project from any ayn or evil that inshallah may go through. Ameen. The issue of Tawheed. This issue is important because, see, a lot of times we get kind of like pushed away into certain other stuff, and we get taken off to other areas. There's a couple of extremisms. Number one, to think that Tawheed doesn't have to be taught. That's one extremism. That's actually insane. Because that's the whole point. That that's the asl of the creation, what it was created for in the first place. And it's also an extreme version that only Tawheed should be taught. The only Tawheed need to be worried about. This is also extremism. We don't find this in the way of the Prophet ﷺ or any other messenger before him. We don't find that they only worried about Aqidah only. That was the source, but there were other things that were going on that had to be dealt with. And so this idea that these two extremes are actually extreme. We take the middle course as Ahlul Sunnah, that Tawheed is the asl, Tawheed is the source, but we also have things around us that we have to deal with, like what's happening in Philadelphia right now. The overwhelming mass killing of young black men in the streets is actually insane. And the fact that leadership in that place is not focusing on it it's actually retarded. That's actually insane. That much harderage is going on, that people tend to not even, like it's not even happening. Wa alaikum salam to the guy, what's going on, sis? I love you too. And so that's because we have detached ourselves away from the problems of the people around us. And actually, that's actually insane. But anyway, Sheikh Ismail Khan, in his book, Taqweed al-Iman, he says, he brings a hadith of Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, when he said, قال رسول الله عليه الصلاة والسلام من صره أن يتمثل له الرجال قياما فيتبوأ مقعد من النار. Salam to what's going on, Abu Kasha? What's going on, Sheikh? That the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu salam, in translation, he says, whoever is pleased or okay with men or people rising for him, standing for him, then let him take his seat or his place in the hellfire. And obviously this needs some explanation. And he says, هذا وعيد شديد لمن أحب أن يقف الناس أمامه وديع أيمانهم وعلى شمائلهم في غاية الأدب وتواضع. And he says that this is Allah, the Prophet ﷺ gave a severe warning to the one who loves for people to stand for him or to be in front of him in a submissing role, in a role of submission, right? On their right and on their left. And where they're like this in front of the individual, bowing down, or when they stand for him, it's for a particular reason that this king or this particular person is a person of status. Let's give some explanation to it. Is it all the time? Because this actually can be shirk. The sheikh is bringing it for a particular reason. For example, if somebody, it's just the simple fact of somebody standing for somebody, overpraising them out of respect. If that's something that the Prophet ﷺ deemed and gave us a very warning to, what about standing at graves? What about standing in front of idols? The Prophet ﷺ gave us a very warning to people who, like you go, for example, back in the day, they go to a king and everybody have to stand here, and everybody gets up and stand for a king. A lot of times you'll find that this was some belief system behind it, especially in places like Persia, the Far East, Japan, when they stood for their kings, because they believed those kings had the right, divine right to be obeyed and to legislate, that their gods gave these kings, or they were the manifestation of their gods, and they stood for them because of that. All right. Because not every time you stand for somebody, it'll automatically be shirk or disbelief and stuff like that. Because we know people stand for judges in America in the courtroom, and there's no necessarily belief behind that will make them think they worship in the judge. But still, the Prophet ﷺ warned from that type of behavior, because we find that the Prophet ﷺ closed all doors to shirk. If you look at Kitab al-Tawheed, when it says about the Mustafa ﷺ, when he blocked any way toward shirk. And we understand that, okay, well, we understand sometimes you can't avoid standing for a judge, because that may get you in trouble in the courtroom. Salam to the Bakato. It may cause your case not to go the right way. All that's ijtihad and fiqh issues and stuff like that. We got to make the right call when we can. But I'm saying is that the usl of the situation that we don't stand for anybody that way, because actually that leads to shirk. And we'll find that a lot of nations already have fell into that shirk because the belief system behind them when they stood for these kings. Okay, like the Japanese and their emperor. They believed their emperor had the right, divine right from their gods to be the emperor. So standing for them was an Aqidah issue. It wasn't just an Orfi issue. It wasn't just a cultural issue. It actually was a belief behind it. So the Sheikh is bringing these points up. So he says, كَالْتَمَاثِ وَلَا تَحَرِّكَ وَلَا تَتَكَلَّمْ لَا تَنْظُرُ يَمِينًا وَلَا شِمَالًا. He says, so what about, for example, an idol, right? That can't look to the right or the left, doesn't even know you're actually standing for it, but people literally stand for it. This is, I'm saying, the intellect of a person who's committing shirk. Because, I mean, what is even worse? The human being who can literally see you standing for him, or what about an idol that can't even look to the right or the left, doesn't even know you standing for it, but you submit yourself and you belittle yourself and you glorify and you take total submission to something that can't even know that you stood for it. Think about that. Now, we have to break shirk down into the nitty-gritty of it. Actually, it's a mental disease, as well as it being a heart disease. It goes into actually being a mental problem. So he says, وَقَدْ أَوْدَعُ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ بِجَهَنَّمْ فَإِنَّهُ أَحَبَّ أَنْ يُعَذِّمَ النَّاسِ بِمَا يُعَذِّمُونَ بِهِ اللَّهِ إِذَا وَقِفُوا لِلصَّلَاةِ. He said, وَادِعِ يُمْنَاهُ عَلَى يُسْرَاهُمْ فِي أَدَبِ الْخُشُوعِ كأنه ادعى ألوهية تشبه بالله. The Sheikh is bringing a great point here, and inshallah I'm going to try to explain it the best way I can. He says that the Prophet ﷺ has promised the individual who does this, who loves for people to stand for him in this hadith, right, with the hellfire. Why? Because he loves that people glorify him in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They love to be glorified. Now, what he's talking about, the people who love to be glorified, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is being glorified or venerated. For example, Fir'aun, Nimrud, all of them love for people to stand for them because they believe themselves to have the divine right for people to stand for them. They believe they were gods. They literally believed that. Okay. It wasn't just out of respect. It wasn't just out of because this is the king. It was more to it than that. Okay. And because people literally stood for them, like they were praying. It was the same to them standing for Nimrud and Fir'aun and the emperors and all these different people, the Persian kings, as if they were praying. They had the same feeling, the same ta'zeem and the same tadallul. They had the same belief system and the same submission in their chest that they would have that they stood in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The same exact thing. This is why it's so important that we stay away from some of this cultural stuff that's in our country. Now, it may not be shirk automatically, but it leads to that. As we know from the story of Nuh alayhi salatu salam, that it led them to that. That whole thing of over-praising, over-loving, sitting at the graves and doing this and doing that, it leads to that. How do we know that? And we look at some of our cultural things. How many of our older relatives, how many of our relatives still go to the grave of a dead relative and still talk to the grave? Because a lot of times we'll say, well, this stuff is foreign to us. No, some of it, the way they may practice it in different countries may be foreign. We may not do it here, but the idea that a grave is venerated, an idea that we're going to the dead, and the idea that stuff isn't foreign to us. If you just think about it for a second, how many of our family members still talking like grandma's watching over me? Grandma knew I needed that money, that's why I found it. They're still going to the grave, taking flowers there and sit and talk to the dead person in the grave and believe that dead person hears them and is able to protect them and watch over them. How many of our relatives still believe that to this day? So this idea that it's foreign to us, no, it's just different, but it's the same concept. It's the same concept. It's tadallul, it's ta'zeem, it's all of that. This is why we take gifts to the grave. To be nice to the person in the grave. So our grandmother, you don't want to forget the dead. It's the same concepts. Just because some of it is different, but it's the same exact concept. And the shaitan is tricked to believe that we don't have to deal with this type of stuff. But we literally do. So, وَقَدْ ظَهَرَ مِنْ هَذَا حَدِيث أَنْ الموضوع أمام عظيم أو كبير في أدب تواضع لا يقصد به إلا تعظيم من أمور التي خصص الله تعالى لتعظيمه. And the Sheikh is saying that we know, because what happens is that it's as if somebody, you stand for somebody when he comes into the room, right? And we're talking about somebody of position. We know from our custom sometimes when people brothers walk in the room, we get up, shake their hand and hug them. I'm not talking about that. We have to make the difference between customary things that we do and what the Sheikh is trying to explain here. Okay, we understand that we get out the car, we see a brother, we jump out the car. Yo, what's up, huh? You know what I'm saying? What's going on? Or we see, I'm saying, a brother come walk in the library or whatever, we get up, go shake his hand. It's not, we got to separate customary things from what the Sheikh is trying to explain here. He's explaining that people who want people to stand for him as if they're just as important as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَكَأَنَّهُ أَدَعَ أُلُوهِيَّةَ تَشَبَّهَ بِاللَّهِ. As if he wants to be known to be to resemble Allah in his divinity. Okay? And we got to be careful, even if we don't have that belief. But we stand up for somebody because we think they're important. For example, we don't stand up for regular old brothers, right? But when somebody of importance come in, we all stand up and stand still, have our hands crossed like this. You know how we're waiting for the guy to talk to us. We got to be careful with stuff like that. We got to be careful because that's a doorway to what? Shirk. It's a clear doorway. The Prophet wouldn't have gave this doing like this. He was severe because it leads to that. Okay? Anything that leads to something haram itself has to be haram. This is why he said, "Let taqrabu zina." He didn't say don't do zina. He said don't go close to it. Anything that may lead to that is itself haram. So that's what we have to understand. So anyway, the next thing that the Sheikh he brings, right? He says, "Ta'buduna ma tanhitun." Do you worship what you made with your own hands, what you have carved and made out of stone or wood or whatever the case may be? Okay. أخرج الترمذي عن ثوبان رضي الله عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا تقوم الساعة حتى تلحق قبائل من أمتي بالمشركين حتى يعبدوا الأوثان. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, the day of judgment will not be established until groups or tribes from my ummah, from my people, from the Muslims, will act like the mushrikeen until they worship Othan. Until they worship the Othan. And this hadith is in the Tirmidhi in Kitab al-Fitan. And this hadith is Hasan al-Sahih. Now, the Sheikh is going to explain some things here that I think we need to take a look at. Firstly, he says that that we understand from this hadith that there's two types of shirk. Now, the two types of shirk he's going to mention here is not what we usually hear about, the terminology like minor shirk and major shirk, because that's not what he's talking about. He's talking about the actual things that shirk is being committed with. Okay, there's two types of things, and they have two different names of things that we usually make shirk with. Okay, the human being in the most cases, they're doing this to these particular things, and this is what these things are called. And then, inshallah ta'ala, he says, and Nawal Awwal and Yuj'al al-Ahad Timthal Thumma Yu'bid Yuqalu lahu fi al-Lughat al-Arabiyyah Sanamun. He says that when somebody makes a resemblance of something, human being, right, or other than that, from something that he makes an resemblance of, angel, jinn, then this is what's called a sanam. This is what's called a sanam. Okay, that in his opinion, that there is nothing else that could be a sanam except that you carve it in the image of something, right? Something that could be alive, like a human being, an angel, or jinn, or those particular things. Okay. And he said the second type of thing that we make shirk with are things that are inanimate objects that are not alive. For example, he says, and no fani and yakhassasa baytul aw shajara aw hajar aw khashab kirtas. He said, for example, when people specialize or they point out a particular house or place, a tree, a rock, wood, or some type of scroll, all right, that is connected to a particular place or individual, and they yu'abid or you jalla or yu'adhim, and then they what? Glorify it, and renovate it and glorify it to the point where it becomes an ilah. Yeah, a statue. Okay, so the sheikh is basically saying a statue is something that resembles something that's alive. And there's different opinions, and I'm gonna bring some of those opinions because so we don't think that it's only one understanding. But this is the sheikh's position. He's saying that a sanam is something that's a statue that looks like something. For example, Buddha is a sanam, or is an idol. Okay, Vishnu is an idol. The statues of saints and Jesus and things they got like that. That's a sanam in his position. An Othan is something that like a tree, a rock, you know what I'm saying, and or a house, okay, or some type of scroll that people believe that has some type of power or something like that. He said those things that are not in particular shape of something that could be alive, that would be a wathan. That would be a wathan, okay. And a sanam and a wathan to the sheikh here, Ismail Khan, are two different things. They're not the same thing. He believes a wathan are those things that don't take the form that's carved and don't take the form of idols or things that we know to be human. Like somebody made a carving of me and put it in the middle of a park and people worshiped it. That would be a sanam to the sheikh. But a tree that's being worshipped and done the same thing to, that would be a wathan. Okay, I hope people understand what I'm trying to say. Or the shape of the sun will be a wathan. Okay, the moon. Okay, something like the shape of a fish. Okay, or the shape of a piece of wood that people think are holy, and they go pray to the wood and they go rub the wood. That would be considered to be a wathan. Okay, but something like Buddha and places like that, that will be a sanam. And obviously, there are more opinions than that. For example, he says, "And no sanam is not the sheikh." All right, this is just another position. He's saying that the sheikh's position is that a sanam ala surah to the khalq bashar. That a sanam is on the things that look like a human being or other than that could be alive, right? A wathan ma kana ala ghayriha. That a wathan is anything other than that looks like anything other than that. So that's what the sheikh is saying, that they're two separate things, right? Now, he says that النقل عن عرفة قال ما اتخذوا من آلهة فكان غير صورة فهو وثن. He says that some of the ulama, they say that whoever takes a god other than a surah, meaning it's not made to look like something, it's just an object, then that's a wathan. He said, فَإِذَا كَانَ لَهُ صُورَةٌ فَهُوَ صَنَمٌ. And the other scholars say that if it has an image and it's an image of something, then that will be a sanam, right? Now, تفرقت الأقوال أئمة اللغة في تفسيرهما. That the ulama though, they differ in the tafsir of these two things, right? وفرق بينهما فمنهم من قال بالعكس ومنهم من لم يفرق بينهما وطلقهما على المعنيين. Some of them though, they say they don't make a difference between the two, that they say both of them are the same thing, that both of them, meaning that a sanam is a wathan and a wathan can be a sanam, and that in the sharia both those two things can be placed on the other, and Allah knows best. Okay, and Allah knows best. So it's important that you're going to find that the particular position that the sheikh is taking here, you might see another position. So don't be shocked to say that you might find some people ahlul ilm past and present calling a wathan a sanam or sanam a wathan, and Allah knows best. Okay, and we're going to get into exactly the point I'm trying to make, because actually if you look at Qurunatul Muwahideen, the Sharh Kitab al-Tawheed by Sheikh Hassan Abdul Rahman, the grandson of Muhammad Wahab, he actually brings some little small bits of information about how people went astray in the wathan and things like that, and why this sheikh has that opinion, because the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned his grave as being a wathan, and we know that a grave is not an image of anything. So this is why some of the early man say a wathan is something that doesn't have an image, and they get that from this hadith. But anyway, he says, you have some people that sit at a grave for 40 years, 40 days. And some of them will go sit and worship in a graveyard, or a garden. And this garden will be that this garden will be connected to a particular righteous person that did something there. So people will go to this garden thinking that they can get that same benefit, or they renovate this person by going to the same place and doing acts of worship in the name of this person to their particular God or to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of people from the awliya, or Duriha Mansub min al-Qurtas Mansub ila Sayyidina Hassan Hussein ibn Ali. Or you'll have, for example, some of the Shiite, they make graves, or they make temples or places to go worship out of paper or scrolls or scroll paper or something like that to Hussein. A Sunam is Sod, Noon Meme, and a Wafan is Wild, Fad, Noon. Okay? So, he said, and then you'll find them that they will make a alam, right? يعدمون كل ذلك يقدمون إليه النذور وقرابين ويصنعون بعض الشهداء طاقا وعلما ومدفعا يقربون إليه أنعام يلحفون به ويدعونه. It's very important we understand this. He said that they will go to their particular God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, using a mediator between them and Allah, and they will go there and they will do vowing, they will do qarabeen, I mean they will bring animals there and stuff like that to be slaughtered, like from the an'am. And they would, for example, say if you had somebody that was a shuhada, or somebody that was a very religious person, or somebody that was a martyr, they will build a talqin wa alamin. They will build a mount or some type of tall, elevated building, and then they will put a flag on it, some type of way to know that this person, this is the grave of so-and-so. And then they will build around it a moat or some type of protection barrier, okay, to protecting this particular thing. All this is to venerate the person in the grave. All of this is to venerate the person in the grave. Then they will go to it with slaughter, with the an'am, like the sheep and the goats and particular things like that. And they will go there swearing by this grave or making dua to it, calling upon it because they like to raise it to a certain level. They went extreme, what? And venerating and tadallu. You'll see, like, for example, in Egypt, you'll see people crawling to the grave of Hussein and Zainab, crawling, crying and crawling and wiping on the walls. And let's bring it home. Do we not see people kissing the cross? We got to stop thinking this stuff is foreign. It's not foreign. It happens right here in America. Right down the street from my house, right here in Georgia, there's a big church built upon graves. Okay, right there on 5th Street. I think it's 5th, near 5th and Girard. There's a big Catholic church that was built upon a saint. And people still to this day go there and venerate this saint. The same thing you see doing as Sufis do, the same thing Christians do at venerating these saints that churches are built over. It's the same process. So don't think this stuff is foreign. It's not foreign to us. It's the same thing happening. It's the same thing. Okay, it's the same exact thing. So the Sheikh, he goes on and he says, وَقَدْ أَخْبَرَ النَّبِي أَنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ الَّذِينَ يُصْبِحُونَ فَرِيصَةَ الشِّرْكِ وَثَنِيَّةً عِنْدَ دُنُوِّ السَّاعَةِ. And the Prophet ﷺ informed us that there will be Muslims who will become what? They will become mushrikeen, or follow behind the mushrikeen by doing the same thing they do, falling into wathaniyyah, worshipping awthan and asnam towards the end of the world. في آخر الزمان يكون شركهم من نوع عكوف على أشياء تنسب إلى السابقين. He said that the shirk they will fall into is one of the type of shirk that they will start to have ukuf. They will start to sit at places or things that is connected to some past people or things from the past before they were Muslims. Whatever tribe they were, Arab tribe, or whatever tribe they were, they will start to go back to that types of jahiliyyah. And worship like that and not worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone anymore. They will go back to what the Prophet ﷺ saved them from by Allah's permission in the beginning. They will go back to that. So we shouldn't be shocked that we see all people going, this shirk happening, that people are going back to getting worse and worse and worse. We shouldn't be shocked that shirk is growing because the Prophet ﷺ already told us that shirk will grow. And before the time of the Mahdi and Isa alayhi salam, when shirk will be eradicated from the earth, and then it will come back again after that time period, and then before the end of time, it will only be mushrikeen and those worst people on the earth. And then Allah will end the earth. So let's not be shocked that this cycle is happening. Okay? So, فَيَعْتَقِدُونَ فِي هَذِهِ أَشْيَاءِ النَّفْعَ وَضَرَرَ وَيَغْلُونَ فِي تَقْدِيسِهَا وَتَعْظِيمِهَا. And he says that they will believe, or have a conviction in these things, that they benefit and they harm them, and they will go extreme and over deitizing these particular things, venerating them. They will go extreme in this. And what do we mean going extreme? If you look at most pagan religions, Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, all of them, they all have one thing in common with all the different names they have, all different characters. But one thing they do have in common is that this issue of placing divinity on creation, placing divinity on creation, this whole idea that creation can be divine after they die. The Christians did it with Isa alayhi salam, even though he didn't die. The Shiite did it with Hussein. Okay. The Buddhists did it with Buddha, and on and on and on and on. The Hindus do it in their religion. Righteous people died, and then they raise them to a certain level, and they become divine, even though they couldn't stop themselves from death. And then they venerate them after they die with different acts of worship that Allah only legislated for himself. Okay, out of fear, hope, and love for these particular individuals. Or some of the Muslims have fell into this thinking that Allah made this a wasila to him, that they're not worshiping them. They're actually using this as a vehicle, just like we use salat, just like we use fasting, just like we use hajj, just like we use growing a beard. Some use wearing hijab, just like we use making witr. They think that it's one of those vehicles like that they're not worshiping. It's the trick of the shaitan. And so now we're going to read just a little bit of the benefits of the chapter. كتاب التوحيد ما جاء أن الغلو في القبور الصالحين يسرها وأوثان تعبد من دون الله. From the book قرة العيون موحدين, right? And one of the points that the Sheikh he brings out here, Sheikh Hassan Abdul Rahman, rahimahullah ta'ala, he's the grandson of Muhammad Wahab, rahimahullah ta'ala. One of the benefits that he brings is that the issue of a grave becoming a othan or a wathan. Okay, and we already went through the issue of a sanam and a wathan. He says, Ra Malik fi Muwatta, that Imam Malik brought this hadith, and Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam قال اللهم لا تجعل قبري وثنا يعبد اشتد غضب الله على قوم اتخذوا قبور أنبيائهم مساجد. That the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he made a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, "Oh Allah, do not allow for my grave to become a wathan, worshipped, and that the anger of Allah, the severe anger of Allah, be upon those who take the graves of their Anbiya as places of worship." So we understand that the Prophet ﷺ right here in the legislation made it impermissible to take a grave as a place of worship or to venerate or do anything there. And there's other narrations that la taj'al qabri eedan, that he said, do not take my grave as a place of celebration. And it's not even talking about actually worshiping the grave. Do not even make it a place of celebration is done. So what about the actual worship of it? Okay. And also you'll look at when it says, don't take the graves of the Anbiya as masajid. Now, don't even build a place over it. Even if you necessarily not even praying to the grave, but to even have a place of worship built on top of a grave is impermissible in Islam. Before you even get to the fact of worshiping the actual grave. Now, the one thing I want to bring out here, that according to this narration, that the imams that are wathan is something that doesn't have an image. They use this hadith that the Prophet la taj'al qabri wathanan, do not take my grave as a wathan. And a grave obviously doesn't have is not drawn or not in the image of anything. Okay, it's not built in the image of anything. Okay. And he said that the severe anger of Allah is upon those people who take the graves of their Anbiya. As we said, because we got to understand that Islam blocks these things. If you look at the Sharia, literally it's put in place to stop things happening before it happens. Like, la taqrabu zina, okay? Don't take the places of Anbiya as the graves of the Anbiya as places of worship. Because even if your intent is not to worship them, it's to respect them, eventually it leads to that. Because what happens if the people die off and generations come after them, they forget. And then people start praying to the actual grave, like Iblis ran that cap up on the people of Nuh. He said, oh man, these the guys your people used to ask for rain. Ran that cap on them, and they fell for it. So he says, Quran Malik fi Muwatta, أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال اللهم لا تجعل قبري وثنا يعبد اشتد غضب الله على قوم اتخذوا قبور أنبيائهم مساجد وذلك أنه خاف أن يقع من أمته في حقه. And he said, the Prophet ﷺ said it because he feared that his ummah will fall into the same thing or go against his deserved rights, just as the Jews and Christians did for their Anbiya before. Just what he did, because we know the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that we will follow behind them, shubran. We would, if one of them slept with their mothers, one of us would. That we would resemble them, before the end of time, we resemble them like two shoes or two sandals resemble one another. So we know we're falling into this. And he brings that, but Shaykh Hassan al-Rahman, he says, وَسَبَبَ ذَلِكَ غُلُو فِيهِمْ, that the reason for this is extremism. The reason for this is extremism. And what's important to understand about extremism is that this stuff can happen even though we think it's not going to happen. Extremism and following behind a scholar. Okay? Extremism and following behind a doctor. Extremism and following behind putting all your hope and trust inside of a masjid in a group of particular people. This leads you to shirk eventually. Okay? Some people are going to fall into shirk and some may not, but the reality is that why did the Prophet give this severe warning about not standing for people? This severe warning, not overpraising people. Severe warnings. Because eventually the heart, you can't control what it does. And if you put it in particular situations where it can't control itself, it's going to go the wrong way. And when it goes the wrong way, you find yourself worshiping somebody. You already see it happen. People job not to crazy things. Anyway, I'm sorry. I don't know if the video is slowing down or messing up. I'm not sure. It looks like it is here, but I'm wrong. But anyway, I'm gonna try to finish this up right now because I only have one piece to do. He says, "Ya ahl al-kitabi, la taghlu fi dinikum." And the Prophet said, he also said, Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 77, he said, "O people of the book, the Jews and Christians," right? He said, "Do not go extreme in your religion. Do not go extreme in your religion." Okay? Extremism is many things. Okay? It's not the time to go, but extremism is many, many, many levels of things. Okay? The reality is that don't go extreme in your deen. But we did. That's how we got a cult. We did. That's how we got all these sects. We did. That's how we got Salafi publications. That's how we got these different particular things. Because we went extreme in our religion. That's why we got division. It says, غَيْرُ الْحَقِّ لَا تَتَّبِعُوا أَهْوَاءَ قَوْمٍ قَدْ ضَلُّوا مِنْ قَبْلِ. He says, don't go extreme in your religion. Do other than the truth. And do not follow the desires of those people who went astray from before. The Jews and Christians. Don't act like them. They were Muslims before and they not now. So don't think that you're safe. But extremism will lead you to that. Extremism will lead you to that. And he says, وَأَضَلُّوا كَثِيرًا وَأَضَلُّوا عَنْ سَوَاءِ السَّبِيلِ. He says, they went astray and they led others astray, many astray with them. And they went astray from the straight path. So we'll find people leading others astray because they themselves went astray. And they will lead others astray. And the Prophet, and the Shaykh goes on, وَكَذَلِكَ رَغَبَ إِلَى رَبِّهِ أَنْ لَا يَجْعَلْ قَبْرَهُ وَثَنًا يُعْبِدْ. And with that being said, with hadith in this ayat, the Prophet ﷺ earnestly desired from his Lord that his grave would not become a wathan, a place of worship, where he's being worshipped. يُعْبِدْ قَدْ عُدِبَتْ قُبُورٍ أَنْوَاعِ عِبَادَةٍ. As we see the graves are being, a lot of different acts of ibadah are being done at these graves. From slaughtering, from vowing, from making dua. People crying and crawling to the grave. Wa'udhu billah. It's happening right here in America. Right here. I mean, people falling out crying to a cross. crying, falling out on the ground, getting the Holy Ghost. You got to fan them down. They're kissing on the cross, kissing the feet of a statue of Maryam. How many? This stuff is not foreign in our culture. It's not foreign. It happens every day. So he says, لا يخفى وتقدم في هذا حديث عائشة رضي الله عنه that أن خشى أن يتخذ مسجدا, that the Prophet feared that if his grave was out in the open, that it would become a place, Eid or a wathan. And so the Prophet ﷺ, with that being the case, the people of the past, they blocked it with 3 walls so they would not be able to get to it. Now, let's go into what we would consider. He mentions here, Ibn Jarir في سند عن سفيان and Mansur and Mujahid, when the Prophet, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَفَرَأَيْتَ اللَّاتَ وَعُزَّى, right? And Surah An-Najm, كَانَ يَلُطُّ لَهُمْ سَوِيقٌ فَمَأْتَ فَأَقِفُ عَلَى قَبْرِهِ. So Ibn Abbas, he said, كَانَ يَلُطُّ سَوِيقَ لِلْحَاجِ. Now this particular man, right, Lat, he used to feed the people on Hajj when they got there. He was a righteous guy, right? According to whatever they consider to be righteousness at that particular time from amongst his people. And when the people from Hajj will come, he will feed them. This is before the revelation of the Quran and before the sending of the Prophet ﷺ to that particular region. And this particular individual used to feed people on Hajj when they would come at Hajj. And at this time, there were 300 and something idols inside the Kaaba. So he would feed the people when they got there. And when he died, people sat at his grave. They sat there and they venerated him because they remembered the righteousness that he did. So that being the case, they venerated him to the point where even up to the time of the Prophet ﷺ, this still was an issue. The veneration of a grave. And it became a wathan because it wasn't in the image of the man. It was a particular place and a grave and a place that they placed upon where he was used to stand or where he died. They would put a particular thing there. So according to Sheikh Ismail Khan, it was a wathan, not a sanam, because it wasn't in the image of the man or image of something. But anyway, he said, أَفَرَأَيْتُ اللَّاتَ وَعُزَّى. Do you not see Lat wa Uzza? That these people are worshiping these things that don't even harm or benefit them? Have you not seen that? And this is an actual question of inkar. Allah disavowing this thing. He's not asking the question, have you ever, the Prophet did he know about it? Did he see it? Obviously the Prophet knew and understood it, but this was a question of inkar. But anyway, and so when he died, the people venerated him and went to this place and his grave became a wathan. His grave became that. This shows that this happens and it's been happening and it happens here. People have graves here. They put bears on it. They put flowers around it. They do the same exact thing, people. Shirk does not change. Just because in America or it's in Indonesia or it's in India, shirk ain't changing. This bid'ah of shirk has been the same shirk since the time of Nuh to now. And it's not changing. Because Iblis don't have to change his game because it's working. But anyway, that is the benefit that I wanted to bring. In the next thing, we will talk about dhabh, taqarruban wa ta'dheeman min haqqillah, slaughtering, being close to Allah by slaughtering and venerating Allah through slaughtering is a right of Allah alone. Then it will go Uda Jahiliyyah fi akhir zaman. Then it will talk about Jahiliyyah returning in the last days. Then it was fitna to shaitan fi akhir zaman. Then it will talk about shaitan's role and his fitna and all of this stuff that will happen during the end of time. And then and that will be the last part of this chapter, which is Radd al-Ishraq fil ibadat, the refutation of shirk and the acts of worship. And we're just mentioning these particular things because the acts of worship, that Allah created acts of worship, created us and the actions that we do. But the realization of worship through these acts have to only be applied to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you take this belief of divinity and this belief of attributes of godly attributes along with the actions that Allah legislated for himself to do, and you put those things together and you take it and you apply it to creation, then this is major shirk. This is ishraq fil ibadat, because only Allah deserves that belief and those actions to be applied to him. So inshallah ta'ala, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us. Anything that I said wrong, anything that I mistranslated, may Allah forgive me for that. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us all. Again, people, Maktab Ibn Taymiyyah is moving to a better neighborhood and a better place. The Maktab is not dead. Okay? Do not listen to all this foolishness and madness on the internet about to take over the masjid and things like that. Leave that stuff. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the Mektaba a better place, a better environment. So Allah is the one who's Al-Hakim. He's the one that knows what he's doing, even though it may look bad, even though people may be tried. But at the end of the day, Allah knows exactly what he's doing. And so it's to be patient and go ahead and keep moving. Okay. You don't see us replying to this madness because at the end of the day, it's all foolishness. It's about moving on and building and establishing something for the Muslims and for the community at large outside the Muslims. And please do not believe that because you got a kufi on and a white thobe and a hijab and a niqab, that your problems are not the problems of the rest of the people in your community. Because if you're in these communities, and most of us are African American or Latino or something like that, wallahi, just because your name is Isa now doesn't mean you don't have the same problems that Chris had, being a black man in America or a minority in America, whatever they want to call us. So believe you, Islam has the answer to all of that. And get behind what the brothers are doing at Imam Muslim Family Center. Get behind what the brothers be doing in your location that benefits the community at large and the Muslims. And get behind Mektaba Ibn Taymiyyah. Okay? The night shift wasn't, that was just about the night shift. It was about our community. So inshallah, the brother is there. You know what I'm saying? Brothers are doing things. The brother, mashallah, Abuesa has a restaurant. He's doing things. Okay? That silliness and that foolishness that's going on, that stuff don't mean nothing. People are moving on, so we should move on. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala aid us, forgive us for our sins. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.